Good evening. I'd like to call to order the March 12th Services and Safety Committee of the Issaquah City Council. My name is Chris Ray. I will be chairing the meeting this evening. With me this evening are Deputy Council President Mariah Batiste and Councilmember Lindsay Walsh. We have five agenda items this evening. Agenda Bill 7721, the 2019 Arch Work Program and Budget. Agenda Bill 7739, Amendment to Interlocal Agreement with the Department of Natural Resources for maintenance and use of High Point Trailhead regarding property acquisition and maintenance fees. Agenda Bill 7740, Puget Sound Energy Recreational Use Agreement and Permit for Limited Use of Operating Property Permits. Amending IMC, hold on a second. Agenda Bill 7723, Cemetery Fee Increase. Amending IMC 2.20.040, and then finally a Parks Project update. So with that, let's get going. First on the agenda today is Agenda Bill 7721, the Arch Work Program budget, and City Administrator Emily Moon will be kicking us off. Welcome, Emily.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to turn it over very quickly to Lindsay Masters. Wanted to introduce her to all of you. Lindsay is the new, not so new, executive manager of Arch. And tonight she's going to be really focusing on what is an annual recurring kind of step with our council to approve the work program and the budget. And both of those pieces have been incorporated into city's work program and our budget as well at this point in time. Lindsay? Oh. Kristen just reminded me the other thing I was supposed to do. We have a brief PowerPoint just as a visual aid to highlight some of the things that are in your packet in addition to some background information on Arch. So I wanted to make you aware of that. We will work after the fact to get that out to you as a resource for the future and also attached to the packet after the fact.
Okay, so I'll just
A little closer there.
I'll try to be brief, but I did want to touch a little bit on Arch as an organization, and being new to Arch, a lot of this was new information for me and learning over the last few months. But just briefly, Arch is an interlocal agency. We're made up of 15 member cities in King County that come together and jointly plan for affordable housing in the region. Our governance structure is that we are governed by our members. We have an executive board, and I've been really pleased to work with Emily during her time as chair on the board, as well as representatives from all our other member cities. We also rely on the City of Bellevue as our administering agency and our fiscal agent. And annually, we come to all of the member city councils and request your approval of our budget and work program. That is a requirement under our interlocal agreement. In addition, we also come to you to request approval of funding allocations through the Arch Housing Trust Fund. And so in the future, you can probably expect me to see me or other Arch staff coming and bringing those recommendations. Just touching on the highlights of how Arch works with our members, what are the key activities that we do to plan for affordable housing and to create affordable housing. First and foremost, we do assist cities to invest in affordable housing, and that includes pooling local funds from each member city, and then also taking those funds and leveraging them with other funding partners, both public and private. We do a fair amount of housing policy and planning. We work with individual member cities on their local priorities and planning. We also do a fair amount, and this is a growing part of our work program, of administration of housing programs. And that is to say, once you have adopted a policy or a program, we help you actually implement it and administer those, create affordable housing agreements, and monitor the long-term affordability of the units that are created. finally, we try to spend as much time as we can interacting with the public and doing a fair amount of outreach and education. We are based in the community. We're located in the Together Center in Redmond, and so we have a fair amount of foot traffic that comes through the door of people seeking affordable housing. We work with those people to help them navigate to the available opportunities. Very high-level snapshot of some of the impact of ARCH activities over the last couple decades. This is a snapshot of production of affordable units through the Housing Trust Fund investments, which total close to $63 million, and that's produced over 3,600 units. This is a geographic display of where those units are located and the types of projects that they are in by population type. And ARCH has done a pretty incredible job over the last 25 years of distributing those projects well across the region. This is a production chart of affordable units that are affordable at low and moderate income levels, created through incentive programs, and those are kind of distinct from our Housing Trust Fund investment units. And so what you see here is over the years, we now have 10 cities that over time have created affordable housing incentive or inclusionary programs. And so when new development is created, we are able to achieve affordable units in those new projects. And so that's been a growing number of units that we oversee. So before you today is our work program. It's a somewhat detailed, lengthy document, but it includes at the beginning a discussion of what our priorities for the year would be. And we had a good discussion with our board about what are the things that we really want to focus on in the coming year. And so first and foremost, that was strengthening our program administration and our monitoring functions, and that's reflective of the fact that we haven't that portfolio of units has been growing, and it's just reached a sizable level at this point. And second, we also want to focus on the opportunities for where can we grow the most number of affordable units. And so where we see those opportunities is on transit-oriented development projects on publicly owned land, and in developing proposals for more dedicated revenue sources for affordable housing. So taking the available pipeline of opportunities and coming up with the resources to invest in those projects. And then finally, we wanted to evaluate who is being served by the affordable housing programs that we are working so hard to create. And so we want to take some time to evaluate that and determine if we need to pursue increased outreach or other strategies to reach populations who we're not reaching. I won't go over everything in this slide, but we work with every member city to identify not just broadly speaking all those kind of core functions that ARCH does for all cities, but also what specific planning and projects individual cities want us to work on with them. And so this is a list of the activities Issaquah identified, and we are looking forward to working on those together. And that is it. I'm happy to take any questions.
Any questions for Lindsay? Happy President Batiste.
Thank you, Lindsay. Thanks for the presentation. Nice to meet you. Could you speak a little bit more about ARCH's role in terms of TOD and
Sure.
Issaquah?
Sure. So I think I'm sure you know a lot about the transit-oriented development project that has been in the works for some time. Part of what made that project, Trailhead, possible was the investment of Housing Trust Fund resources. So those are a critical piece of that project, and so we will be helping to actually make that happen. When the project is ready to be financed and get under construction, we will be developing all the contract documents and working with the developer and their attorneys, et cetera, to close that financing.
Thank you.
Anything else? I just have a couple of questions, and they're kind of generic. But so, Can you talk a little bit about Arch's monitoring function for existing properties?
Sure. So we have two kind of different slices of our portfolio. One, as I mentioned, are the housing trust fund projects that we invest actual resources in. Those we do a fair amount of work with other public funders, principally King County and the Washington State Housing Finance Commission, to coordinate our monitoring efforts. And that is basically comprised of a collective use of a statewide web-based reporting system. So we use that to obtain annual reports that document the compliance of those properties with all of the income and rent requirements that we all impose. And then in addition to that, we work with other funders to get information through physical inspections of those projects. And then finally, those web-based reports also provide financial information about kind of the overall health of the properties. And so we're able to kind of monitor those to make sure that they are sustainable long-term.
And then, so I'll tell you where I'm going, then
Sure.
it'll just make it much more easier for you. There's been a fair growth in the number of Arch units over time.
Yes.
And I'm just curious if the amount of staff has increased in that same window commensurately.
Funny you should ask. Just to be transparent, it really hasn't. It's something that we've started to discuss with our executive board and really tried to understand where we are now and kind of where we need to get to, and then discuss how we need to get there.
I know that in programs like Arch, we want to do all of our funding and pour it into direct services and more units, but at some point, I think to really be effective and at delivering the services, we've got to find out, we have to cover that overhead, that there is a management and administrative cost. So
Yeah.
I'm glad that that discussion has started.
Yeah, I appreciate you bringing that up.
Great. Any other questions from the committee? Nope. We are going to take public comment tonight. Does anybody in the audience like to talk about the Arch work plan? All right, I'm not seeing any, so we'll, anyway, any deliberation comments before we take a vote? All right, so all of those in favor of returning Agenda Bill 7721, 2019 Arch Work Program and Budget to the full council with a recommendation to approve, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Consent? All right, so consent. April 1st.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lindsay. Nice to meet you. Welcome to the team.
Thank you, Lindsay.
All right, so we're going to do some fun on the next agenda bill. So Agenda Bill 7739, which is amendment to the interlocal agreement with the Department of Natural Resources, and Agenda Bill 7740, Puget Sound Energy Recreational Use Agreement and Permit for Limited Use of Operating Property Permit. We're going to do those, the presentation together, and then we will take them up individually for action. That okay with you there, Mr. Watling?
That sounds great.
All right.
I think it makes a lot of sense.
All right, so we have Jeff Watling, Director of Parks, with us.
Yes, thank you. Yes,
You
so
don't look like Jennifer Fink. That's,
no,
I figured
no,
that out.
Jennifer's going to be assisting certainly. Yeah, we'll pull a map up that I think will help for context. And you're absolutely right, Councilmember Ray.
Jennifer?
These two, that I'm not Jennifer, yes, and that these two tasks really represent one strategic project that we've been working on, and know we've had a chance to speak with you in some prior executive sessions related to these that we're now bringing forward as agenda bills. As we know, connection and access to the Issaquah Alps has been, long been a priority for the Issaquah community. Our park strategic plan that was adopted last year, I think, merely reinforced that longstanding reality. And as we began to identify some strategic projects to help reinforce, increase, and in some cases better protect that our access to the Alps, West Tiger Mountain really became a focus and is a focus of these two agenda bills tonight in this project. We have 3 trailheads, and thank you, Jennifer, for putting the map up here. I'll sort of reference that as we're talking, but we really have 3 trailheads that primarily serve West Tiger Mountain in terms of public generally accessing that. These are all owned and managed by the city. But as well, all 3 of these trailheads are encumbered in some way with some private parcels around them. I'll sort of highlight them as we go one by one. The goal of this work was to figure out how to best protect and preserve, and in some cases, create opportunity for future expansion of these trailheads. We're going to start with East Sunset Trailhead, which if you're on Sunset Drive here, just before you begin to head up to the Highlands, you'll notice the trailhead to your right. Jen, thank you, is circling that trailhead. That trailhead represents what we own is in blue on that map. The purple parcel, though they're separated, that's one parcel that is separated. The green line you see, the corridor, is owned by Puget Sound Energy. So a couple things going on with that trailhead. The trailhead represented to the east is, this is our High Point trailhead at Lake Tradition Plateau. That has, the green area there is Puget Sound Energy that owns some property adjoining the parking lot there. And then farthest here to the south is a trailhead sort of known in the community as the end of the Rainier Trail. If you're at the end of the Rainier Trail on 2nd Avenue, there's a really what's very, very informal space for maybe 3 or 4 cars and really just a trail that runs through. That is on Puget Sound Energy property. But all 3 of these trailheads really function as supporting West Tiger. So starting with the East Sunset Trailhead, because I think that was the most complex one to address. The purple property, which is currently privately owned and had been proposed over the years, probably over the decades, for development a number of times. Most recently, just last year, that private property owner at some point in time recently reached out to Department of Natural Resources, our partner, who coincidentally, we really partner with DNR in a significant way on West Tiger. They approached DNR with interest to see if they were interested in purchasing that property. DNR in turn reached out to us, and that began a series of conversations that we began to have with DNR on how we might partner and further partner on seeing what an acquisition would look like and how that could be completed. DNR has some grant funding. They did not have enough grant funding to complete this acquisition solely on their own. So what you see in terms of the solution for that, that we'll touch on as we take these agenda bills one by one, is an opportunity for us to take our current interagency agreement, our interlocal agreement, and amend it. And that is what is before you. That amendment will speak to this opportunity of purchasing the property, and that DNR will be purchasing that property. They went through the appraisal process, and the property was appraised for $685,000. They have grant funding for $400,000 of that. So we, through this amendment agreement, would be contributing $285,000 to complete that acquisition. The joint interagency agreement would then speak to our collective work as partners, having a voice in how not only those parcels are managed and operated and maintained, but also would give us the ability, should we in the future want to consider expanding the Sunset Trailhead or formalizing that in some way. If we have a need for additional capacity, we will be able to work with DNR as our public agency partner in that work. Also on the East Sunset Trailhead, and now the other ones, you'll notice there's 5 parcels up there in green. All 5 of those parcels represent ownership by Puget Sound Energy. While we were having these conversations with DNR in pursuing a acquisition strategy for the purple parcel, we also began conversations with Puget Sound Energy on how to best protect and preserve that as public use. There actually are recreational trails already on those parcels. What started as a conversation about potential acquisition, I think given not only, I think, the value of those properties, but also as we further discussed with Puget Sound Energy, we landed on what is before you tonight, and that would be a limited use agreement, a use agreement that would allow us to formalize the recreational use that is on those corridors, thereby protecting them for the important public access they have. The one parcel that connects with the Tradition Plateau, the High Point parking lot, a portion of that easement is actually on the parking lot, and so as such, PSE is asking for an annual rent, if you will, of $1,000 for continued use of that as paved parking lot. We have spoke with DNR. You'll notice, and why these two agenda bills are so joined together, within the amendment for the agreement with DNR has agreed to pick up half of that cost, realizing that that trailhead and that parking lot serves not only the city-owned Tradition Plateau property, but really is a gateway and a launching off point to DNR's property as well. And so, again, these two agenda bills are very much connected at the hip, but we're certainly happy to present this and feel like these two agenda bills would really represent an accomplishment of really preserving and protecting those three key public access points to West Tiger.
Thanks, Jeff. So let's do the questions as a single unit, and then as we get to the agenda bills, we'll take them up individually. So any questions on the two agenda bills? Deputy President Batiste, you're reaching.
Thank you for the presentation tonight. I was just trying to get clear on the maintenance payments. Could you just explain that a little bit more? So the $1,000 is
Absolutely.
covered by DNR.
It'll be covered. So Puget Sound Energy is asking, so as part of that limited use agreement, specific for that parcel near the parking lot, is asking for $1,000 a year rent,
And it's just
if you will. So
there.
it's just for
Okay.
that.
Okay.
And so as to pay that rent, we approached DNR and said, hey, this trailhead is serving and benefiting both city property, city-managed property, and DNR-managed property. So we have agreed to split that cost. So DNR is going to pay $500 a year of that,
Okay.
and we would be responsible for the other $500 a year.
Okay, just needed some clarification. Thank you.
You bet.
Councilmember Walsh.
Thank you. So Jeff, can you talk about the risks for the city if those, I guess it's one parcel, but kind of there's different risks on each of those properties if that property was to get acquired by not us and get developed?
Yes, so you're in particular the one parcel near East Sunset?
I care about, yes, that one parcel, but I care about them for different reasons, and I just wanted to highlight that.
Yeah,
you would.
absolutely. So I'll touch on the purple-colored parcel first, because that is currently privately held and privately owned. If you were standing in the Sunset Trailhead, you noticed hanging in a tree a Windermere for sale sign. It's been there a really, really long time. So if that were to be developed, it really would encumber the performance of that trailhead. As you look at where that parcel is, if you look at where that sign is relative to the tree, the ability to go from the trailhead up, there's a small remaining corridor that would still be publicly owned. As we look, though, at how that trailhead is used for both bikers and for pedestrians, we really see functionally being able to create two separated trails that would be a mountain bike trail and a pedestrian trail is going to be a far safer way to get from that trailhead up into West Tiger. We would need that purple parcel to be in public ownership to be able to accomplish that.
Then the other thing I just want to make sure that we're highlighting is the portion that's to the east side of that is actually outside of city growth boundaries.
Correct.
And so the loss potential for that portion is really the resources that are on it, that if somebody was to buy, they could go through and use those.
And clear it or use
Yeah.
how they would want to. Yes, you're
Okay.
right.
Any other questions? So I have the financial question. So of the $282,000, it looks like part of it's coming out of I won't even try and find it now. I'll just ask you, where's it coming from?
Yeah, great question. So this is a budgeted project in 2019, and I'm sorry, I should have covered that in the staff report. This is a budgeted project. So the funds for this $282,000 would come from two sources that were budgeted. We have some remaining acquisition funds from the 2013 bond of about, Jennifer, I might phone a friend, 180,000 roughly.
181 and change.
181 and change, thank you. And then the remaining was within budgeted general fund for this East Sunset Trailhead project.
Okay, so those are both in the 19 budget.
Correct.
Excellent, thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions? Oh, Deputy President Matisse.
Jeff, could you just, I was just looking again, the duration of the agreement?
Yeah, they vary. So the duration of our agreement with the PSC limited use agreements is 20 years.
20 years.
The term for the agreement relative to the parking lot in Tradition Plateau is 10.
Okay.
On a friend, right?
Yeah, there's all 5 properties have recreational use. Oh, is this on? Can you? All 5 properties have recreational use agreements, and those are 20 years. Only the parking lot item right here has the limited use of operating permit, and that is a 10-year. And that coincides actually with our 10-year renewal with the ILA for DNR as well.
That's why we felt like it was doable, and that, yeah, I mean, we've had a 20-plus, 30-year relationship with DNR, and we certainly see that continuing, but let's renew these at the same time.
Anything else? So, thank you. Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you, Jeff. Anybody from the public like to comment on these 2 agreements around Tiger Mountain?
I have a question. First of all, step up to the microphone.
For the mic.
Comments, but,
Not sure we can take questions, but we'll definitely take comments.
all right.
Yeah, just state your name and then.
Scott Siemens. I live Wildwood Boulevard up on Mine Hill. And I was wondering, had anyone thought of
Back to the mic, back to the mic.
had anyone
Need to be
thought of
televised.
expanding the parking at the 2nd Avenue end, because there's very much inadequate parking there. So I'll just note that. My experience is mostly with the purple areas up there. I've been a long-time trail builder from back in the days when you could just sort of go out and you saw the need for a trail and you'd sort of put a trail in there, up through today where you see a need, you go talk to someone and ask if you can do that. But that particular spot has always been a problem, because as far as anyone could point out to me where the property line was, it simply doesn't leave enough room for other than a narrow stacked switchback, which is not even adequate for hikers, much less for bicycles and hikers. So currently we've got people out on the sidewalk walking up to the big orange flower trailhead, which isn't very aesthetic. So I've held off for a long time doing anything there, and I'm glad that it's coming to the point where the city will be able to do something proper. But I know you need at least a portion of that purple area there to make a wide enough area to get something other than what I call a developer corridor, because it's typical from developers when they're plotting out home sites, they'll leave a little corridor about that wide, which is their minimum requirement, to put a trail down from the road down into the woods behind. And typically it's just a little steep thing, and you end up having to put steps on it, or one of these little stacked switchback things that isn't practical at all. So anyway, I would be very much in favor of acquiring that just in order to get an adequate trail on it. And I hope something can be done with the parking down there, because that's a very much used area as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, so just our agreement that we're considering tonight with Puget Sound Energy would allow us the ability to explore that. Budget for that, the design for that is not in this work, but this, as I was saying earlier, will provide the opportunity for us to consider expansion.
Great. Thanks, Jeff.
Yep.
David.
David Kapler, 255 Southeast Andrews Street. We've been working on this forever, and the staff work is great. I was shocked. Previous, Margaret kept trying to do something about this. I'm sure you did too, but there was always salmon money that would work for property by the creek, so they get matching money that way. They could never get a match. We got DNR doing a match this time, and a significant match, so that's great. The problem is, I think you don't have much, we're talking the railroad corridor down at 2nd at the end there, so there's not much width that we have. So we can't do a lot there, but we can definitely improve that. The purple properties, I mean, there was Eagle Scout projects working on there. That's what the 4x6s are. Go back to an Eagle Scout. There were Brownie troops and Girl Scout troops and all kinds doing different things, and lots of trespassing trails attempts, especially on the more eastern part. But the bike issue is the bikes come on the railroad grade where they're allowed to be. They get to the end, and they don't have a good, safe way to get down to town. There won't be, and we're not anticipating, I assume, trying to get the bikes up to Issaquah Vista there. It's just way too much grade to fool with and take forever for a trail. But the more eastern parcel, we definitely can with that, and we can really do a nice trail in there and take care of it, and it'll be maintained, it'll be safe. Issaquah Alps Trails Club has worked a lot with Sam with DNR, who does a lot of their trail planning. We've done lots and lots of reroutes, significant long reroutes, lots of maintenance, and we have crews that normally would be up once a week up on Tiger, but are snowed out. So our crew has had a break, but we'd love to get the opportunity to work with the city on doing this. And we're working with Matt and Sam, I'm sure, could come together and figure out where they think these two trails should be, and we could, and we work real cheap. But we do great work. So thank you very much, and super. Man, this is really neat.
Thanks, David. Anyone else care to speak? All right. Okay, let's take these up one at a time because they are separate agenda bills. So on Agenda Bill 7740, the Puget Sound Energy Recreational Use Agreement and permit for limited use of operating property permit. That would be the green properties, correct?
Correct. Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Any comments? Deliberations? Okay. All those in favor of referring Agenda Bill 7740, Puget Sound Energy Recreational Use Agreement and permit for limited use of operating property permit to the full City Council for action with a recommendation to approve, say aye. Aye. That carries 3-0. Consent or regular business? Consent? It's got to go back. It's got to go, yeah. I would like to do that, but I don't think we have the authority to do that. Deputy President Batiste.
And as we're bringing these back, then they could be coupled in together and presentation together when this comes back? Well, I guess it'll be, if they're both on consent,
Yeah.
then they would just be,
Yeah. So let's do the other one, and if it ends up consent, not an issue, and if not, we can figure this out. All right, and I did them out of order just because I'm feeling like a rebel today. Agenda Bill 7739, amendment to the interlocal agreement with the Department of Natural Resources for maintenance and use of High Point Trailhead regarding property acquisition and maintenance fees. So this includes both the maintenance fee as well as the $282,000 for acquisition of the property that's in the existing budget. Discussion. Okay, all those, this is all, Jeff, I want you to work on shorter titles, please.
Okay. Duly noted.
Yeah, it's like, okay, all those in favor of Agenda Bill 7739, amendment to the interlocal agreement with the Department of Natural Resources for maintenance and use of High Point Trailhead regarding property acquisition and the maintenance fee, to refer back to the full council with a recommendation to adopt. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That passes unanimously, 3-0. Consent? Okay, both on consent, so you're off the hook. Yeah, and I think we've all seen this one before anyway, so.
Okay.
From executive session.
Great.
So, great job, thank you all. This is
Great work, team.
This is really awesome work, and really is great to continue to expand our open space in this community. All right, moving on. So let's go to Agenda Bill 7723, cemetery fee increase, amending IMC 2.20.040, and Brian Bernstein is going to be, Deputy Parks and Rec Director will be presenting. There's room for everyone.
All right. Sorry. There we go. Last time I forgot to turn that on. I think I'm ready.
Okay, Brian, take it away.
Thank you. Just a quick reminder, we brought to you Agenda Bill 7723 at the February 12th Service and Safety Council meeting, recommending a cemetery fee increase. At that time, we acknowledged that the cemetery, that we'd have a cemetery management agreement and a revenue plan that would be coming a little bit later this year. We also discussed just the pros and cons of, hey, what if we combine those two together, right? So that's sort of how we left our last meeting a little bit. And since that meeting, we've had the opportunity to sit down with our cemetery board, our cemetery partner, and have a little discussion around that topic. We're all in agreement that moving forward with not moving forward with Agenda Bill 7723 and presenting that information with a new agenda bill.
Councilmember Walsh?
Okay, they're stepping out.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
I appreciate the focus on me. That's perfect. Thank you. So I'll repeat that really quickly. Just that our cemetery board, Flint office, we discussed, so that discussion we had, and all were in agreement that, let's not move forward with Agenda Bill 7723 and to actually include that within a new agenda bill that will be coming before you a little bit later this year. Staff, in conjunction with the cemetery board and Flint office, plan to present a new agenda bill to you June or July of this year, as we discussed previously, and that's going to include the draft management agreement, the draft revenue plan with proposed cemetery fee increases, and we'll provide market rate comparisons for other organizations providing similar services. The administration, cemetery board, sorry about that. Cemetery board and Flint office are going to be committed to we want to make sure that we establish that management agreement and the revenue plan prior to opening up Section 2 of the Upper Hillside Cemetery. As we discussed last time, that's that biggest portion of the Upper Hillside Cemetery that we have a number of plots still available that just haven't been available for sale. So everybody's united in agreement on the fact that we would like to have all those in place before we open up Section 2 and have a really good plan for moving forward in a healthy way with that when we open it up. Real quick reminder that, we're talking about the all of this that we're talking about coming to you within June and July is going to be within the existing footprint of the cemetery. I know that at times we've heard some, is this including something like an expansion or more? No, this is all within the existing footprint. Just want to make sure that that's a clear piece of that pie. So with that, the recommendation we're making, I'll read it straight from the agenda bill here, is the administration recommends delaying the cemetery fee increase so any increase can be considered in the context of the cemetery management agreement and revenue plan scheduled to be finalized this summer.
Great. Councilmember Walsh.
So I think one of the questions that we had last time in trying to figure out if we preferred waiting or making the price increases now was understanding the kind of cost benefit. The
Yes,
set of
thank you.
how many plots would we end up selling at that lower cost, and is that going to be a particular problem?
That is not going to be a real particular problem, and just, thank you for bringing that up. We did meet with our cemetery partner and talked about how many, we're talking about 2 plots roughly every month that would have been sold. So, given the fact that we're talking a few months here, not a huge issue with that one, especially with the consideration the majority of the plots available for sale will be coming with the opening up of Section 2.
Any other questions for Brian? I have a procedural question. So, since we have this agenda bill in front of us, we need to take some action on that. It sounds to me like the recommendation coming from the administration is for us to not approve this agenda bill, to reject it.
Reject it or expire it, I'm not sure.
What would the words be? Any help from the back on what the action we would take if we want to end a bill or not approve a bill?
You would just not approve it.
Okay.
Go back to full council and then
Yeah.
you make a
So we'll make a recommendation not to approve the agenda bill and send it back to full council. That would be your recommendation.
Correct.
Okay. Okay. Thoughts, deliberation? Councilmember Walsh.
So on that idea, if we suggest not approving it, would it go on consent calendar? You have something there?
when I heard you re-say it.
Yeah.
That's your exacting hearing. I think this is where you're.
Yeah.
You stated not approve and then return to full council. Is that what I heard you say? What you heard me say?
Yeah, but wouldn't the problem then be that while we would be recommending that the full council doesn't approve, if it goes on consent, then if they vote aye on consent, they would be voting to approve it?
No, we can put it on consent with a not approve.
Can we? Okay.
Councilmember, or
That was my
okay.
question.
Deputy President Batiste.
Well, and sometimes we would have the opportunity just to have an explanation. I'm not exactly sure where that would, maybe
do a
it could
committee
come in
report.
committee report.
Yeah.
And just give an explanation.
I think that's a good
So
idea.
everyone understands why and that we're really waiting for this to come back with more information. And I was also going to say thank you for going back to the board, having that conversation, and then talking about some of those metrics that we were asking for and including that into the work plan.
Okay, so any other discussion? I think we're kind of having a much more of a procedural discussion than a substantive discussion right now. So, all right, so what I'm thinking we want to do is, any public comment on the cemetery?
Nope.
Okay, thank you. So, I'm just going to go right to getting us to formally make a recommendation back to the council and then talk about some of the mechanics from there. So all those in favor of returning Agenda Bill 7723, cemetery fee increase, amending IMC 2.20.040, the full council, with a recommendation not to approve, say aye. Aye. And I think this is something that we can put on consent with a don't approve, and then when consent gets adopted, then it would, the bill would end there. And I think, thank you, Mariah, your point is great. So during committee report, I will make sure to call out this discussion because it provides a lot of clarity. And also then, Brian, we'll expect to see another bill coming back sometime later this year.
Yeah, we'll be coming back June or July of this year.
Okay, June or July, and that will have the full cemetery plan, long-term funding plan, and kind of some, what we think the rates are going to look like going forward.
Yes, sir.
That'd be great. All right. That takes us to the end of regular business, but we have a special treat tonight because our very own Jeff Watling is going to do a Parks project update for us so we can have some visibility into what other great things are happening at the Parks Department. So Jeff, thank you for doing this. Really appreciate it.
Oh, you bet. You bet. And this is going to be more of a bit of a teaser than anything, but yeah, we are certainly heading into 2019 in this first quarter in a fast and furious way. Councilmember Ray and I have spoken a couple of times about how to best keep committee updated on really a lot of capital projects and initiatives that we have going on in the department. We are in process of building a format that would, I think, similar to what Infrastructure Committee does now with Public Works projects, be able to have a probably a 2-page, this is kind of what the template is beginning to look like, but something that we're able to track on a quarterly basis. We're able to give status reports as to where we're at, what key tasks have been accomplished, what key tasks maybe have produced a result that's impacting the work plan, et cetera. But just being able to do that on a relatively frequent basis. And I think my question tonight and what I handed out is really this is not our entire work plan by any means in the department, but this is really 19 pretty significant either capital projects and or initiatives that have a series of policy questions around them, or we'll have a policy touch with you that I think are worth tracking and updating you on. I know the recent sort of full city work plan that you received a copy of, 13 of these projects are on there. So again, this doesn't represent a new body of work. It's just, I think, another opportunity to give a little bit more detailed update on what's going on. My plan, our intention is to utilize the April 9th, the next Services Committee meeting, to be able to bring this template, have this in the agenda packet, a chance to not only I think discuss and update you, but a chance for the public to see and get an understanding of where we're at on any and all of these projects. So as you look at this list, if you've got any questions on any of them, I think some of them are going to look familiar to you because you've already seen some touches with a number of these as we're on into the first quarter. I want to thank, in some ways introduce as well, along with Jennifer Fink, Shantae is our new park planner here as well, and she's been helping pull this template together. So I think as our resources within park planning have grown and expanded a little bit, it's really allowing us not only a relatively robust work plan within our park planning work, but also I think some opportunity to get our hands around some of these tools that can better communicate where we're at on a month-to-month basis with projects.
Great. Thanks, Jeff. Any questions for Jeff around the plans? Councilmember Walsh.
So Jeff, the park signage and trail wayfinding,
Yes.
When is that kind of expected to come back?
That's a great question. So we are actually working with communications on coupling that. We just have an RFQ, a request for qualifications that went out. We're actually going to be interviewing firms, marketing and graphic design firms here in the next week or two. Our goal was to kick that off in the second quarter. There'll be a pretty heavy public outreach piece with that. Not only this park signage and wayfinding, trail wayfinding design work, that'll be coupled with, I think, a long sought-after city branding conversation. So we're coupling those together. And so that's how the RFQ was presented. We'll be selecting a firm that's really helping us to do both of those because they're so connected in many ways.
Mm-hmm. And then the dog park includes design, permitting, and construction, all in 2019. Does it feel like that's still going to happen? I think through, I'm like, construction, that usually happens in the summer. But if you've still got design and permitting to happen, does that still seem like it's on track?
Yes, it does. So our goal was this first quarter to confirm site identification. As we've worked with the park board and the community, we've identified a portion of Tibbetts Valley Park as sort of the preferred location. We're now doing some of the more detailed site analysis and design work and permitting work that feels like, yes, we've been shooting for what would be a fall, just given the scope of an off-leash dog park, and we're not talking about a massive construction level project. The goal has always been a fall build with probably a pretty, let's say significant, but a portion of that build would be a community build of sorts. So fall remains our goal and feels doable still.
Great. Deputy President Batiste.
Great question, Councilmember Walsh. That was one of my questions. Same question for the bike skills park. Is that something that it looks like will, with construction, you'll be able to get all the way through?
Fall remains our goal. That's
Okay.
a little bit more complex project. We're partnering with Evergreen Mountain Bike Alliance to work on that. In fact, we just met with them last Friday. The location identified within Central Park happens to be city-owned. It's city-owned property, but it's in King County. So we have King County permitting to go through. We've already met with them. We also have in the approved budget, a portion of that approved budget is some grant funding. So we should be hearing, so there's a number of moving parts going with that project that we've, in fact, as we talked with the team from Evergreen, have given ourselves May as sort of that, really that key month where we'll know how permitting is aligned, how grant funding is aligned, and some of these other key points to that project that will really help us know whether this is a fall, remains a fall construction, or if it's 2020. So.
And then one other question about the Front Street Properties interim use. I believe I remember talking about this. Is that more to put like picnic tables and that kind of thing in place maybe during the summer months to start
Yeah, great question.
letting everyone enjoy?
Yes, absolutely. So this is really intended as how can we put a light touch and do some landscaping and amenities, i.e. benches and whatnot to, yes, activate that this summer and fall. Yep.
Great. Thank you.
Oh, Councilmember Walsh.
Yep. The urban forest management plan, when is going to be the community's first opportunity to kind of get into that and touch it? And
It's great. That will also likely be, as we've lined up the prep work here in Q1, Q2 will be really the first, I think, public announcement and public conversation. We are going to be, there's really 3 elements to that work that's going to be happening. We're going to be working with our partners, our soon-to-be partners with Forterra, and part of their Green Cities program and launching Green Issaquah, so there'll be a community engagement around that. We're also doing a tree canopy assessment with KCD and some grant funding there, and then also looking at how we might be able to achieve some work around our wildlife corridors. So second quarter is when we'll likely begin to have public engagement around all of those and probably launch a conversation collectively on all 3 of those. And then as all 3 of those efforts I think, work through the details. There'll be additional engagement, additional public engagement as they're individualized. Exciting work.
So thank you for doing this. I think it's really important for council to have visibility to the investments we're making in parks, in open space, in facilities. I equally think it's important that the public know what we're doing, and this provides a vehicle for us to share with the public in a very transparent way what's going on. And I'm really looking forward to next month when we can see the full grid and we can start to track this. I think it will help keep everybody in the loop, and I think it will help identify if there's any issues that we need to take action on. So again, thank you very much for pulling this together, Jeff. I really appreciate it. Yep. Okay, any other comments? Okay, with that then, the next meeting of the Services and Safety Committee is scheduled for April 9th here in council chambers at 6:30, and we're adjourned.